I'm back. This is Del K. Brereton, and this is the real spiel. To all the members of the spiel, I apologize, man. It's been a very interesting autumn and winter season. Work schedules are switching up, but I'm declaring in 2026 that the spiel is coming back. So happy and Merry Christmas, season's greetings to everybody. And I just want to get off, right from the rip. I'm not afraid of you ninjas, and I want to have a quick conversation and start the ball rolling with talking about what's happening in the world. To my mentor, to my Hebrew mentor, Dr. David Israel, and the School of Knowledge and of Learning. To all those interested in getting into the Hebrew and jumping down deeper into the annals of history and figuring stuff out, you got to sign up with the doc. Let me know. You can message me at delkbrereton@gmail.com and we can put a class together for you. Listen, let's talk about Mark Rutte. Who is this guy? All right, Mark Rutte currently he's the head of NATO. He's the head honcho of NATO. And individuals like him always kind of catch my attention. That's how my brain works. How does a guy get to being the head of NATO, especially a guy who effectively was, in 1992, he was basically a human resources director for a company that's, like a Costco or Walmart. Like he really wasn't anybody particular, but he rose through the ranks of politics. I believe he's the longest tenured Dutch prime minister. I believe he served for about 14 years, mostly with coalition governments as the prime minister, as the Dutch prime minister. And you know what? I'm not really a big fan of Dutch people in general. I'm just gonna throw it out there and say, the Dutch, South Africa, Dutch slavery, those kind of things, a little bit off-putting. But right now, the Dutch are kind of sitting there as an ambiguous kind of group of people. But interestingly enough, the head of NATO is an ex-Dutch prime minister. But let's get into this gentleman's politics a little bit. Let's get into kind of how he flexes and how he flows. First, I think I just want to bring right to the forefront, this brother does not like Putin, right? And what you see, especially from the summit that took place in June of 2025, and the posturing of NATO right now, is NATO is very concerned with Russia, and specifically Vladimir. Very, very concerned. And it's very interesting the dynamic between Putin, Mark Rutte, and Donald Trump. And I call this the last kings. These kings of the earth have a very different, and if you want to throw in a fourth one, you can throw in Netanyahu. We'll just throw him in for fun, right? And if you want to throw in a fifth one, we can throw in a little under king, and we can throw Zelensky in there too. And coming right around the corner is our guy Carney here in Canada. So, we've got an assembly of individuals who are changing the global dynamic. They're different movers, different thinkers. They're very different. But let me give you a breakdown of how I see it and how these things are going. So, you've got Mark Rutte, who is I would call him, he's a NATOalist. NATO, for those who don't know, or NATO, they do it backwards now. They're spelling it on, what's NATO backwards? OTAN. NATO or OTAN, the North American Treaty Alliance or Treaty Organization. These are a bunch of Europeans who want to make sure that white people always control the world. There's 32 NATO countries. None of them are black. There's no black people in NATO. No black nations in NATO. These are individuals who want to make sure that white people control the world. That's what I see NATO as. That's not racist, that's factual. They also want to make sure that the right kind of white folk control the world. right? So they want to make sure that nations like Russia don't ever have the ability to become Adolf again. They're terrified of those kind of guys. Guys who can control, one guy who can control the entire country by himself, control vast military, very intelligent, very charismatic, very loved by his people, very powerful, and very rich, which is who Vladimir is. They're very terrified of guys like that. Vladimir terrifies, and as we know with Donald Trump, he mesmerizes most world leaders. So Rutte is quite concerned about Vladimir Putin. I believe he thinks Vladimir has far too much power, is far too dangerous to be unchecked. While we say that, NATO was backing the Democratic Party, not Trump. NATO wanted a Kamala Democratic Party to be in control of the White House. Why? Because they were quite concerned of Donald Trump's allegiance to Vladimir Putin. And a White House that they, at NATO, Mark Rutte, cannot control is a White House that will leave NATO weak. But somehow they've brought Donald on side, and it's very interesting to me. Because Donald has a great relationship with Vladimir. I dare say that Vladimir has had to soften his approach even against Ukraine because of Donald sitting on the fence of unpredictability. Right? NATO desperately wants to make Ukraine part of NATO. And for those who know the history of that, that's a no-no. And Russia has said very adamantly that they will not allow it. NATO has said very adamantly, you don't have the right to tell any nation who they can belong to, which is a direct contradiction of the Warsaw Pact, right? The Warsaw Act or Pact, whatever it's called. You can look that up. NATO is never supposed to reach theirself over all the way over there to the Baltic nations, to those Asian areas. NATO is supposed to stay in their place, right? Europe and North America. That's what NATO is. Europe and North America. To try to keep them safe. That's what NATO. That's who NATO represents. That's who are the member states in NATO. The ones who control NATO. It's Europe and North America. Okay, let's go a little further. Rutte has a very good relationship with Israel. He's gone on an apology tour multiple times, apologizing to World War II Jews on behest of Deutschland, his nation. You can Google him yourself, see images of him wearing a little hat and going to memorials and having big handshakes with Netanyahu. So he's very, very connected to the Zionist movement in the world. He is in the pocket of Zionism, clearly in their pocket. He has the panache to somehow whisper into the ears of Donald, keeps Donald very near. If you go back and you look at anything from the summit in June of 2025, Trump is sitting right at his right hand. Trump is his right-hand man. He compliments and thanks Donald and what Donald has done to make sure that they have so much money coming in, and he wants to do anything Donald says, right, to keep Donald in the pocket of NATO. And Vladimir now, sitting on the outside of it, is calling, you know the word, but he's calling foul. He's saying, hey, hold on a second. You didn't want him to be the prime minister or the president of America, but now you're in his pocket. Isn't it interesting? And now you consider me an existential threat to world peace and the stabilization of the world, and you want to raise the level of NATO spending to deal with Russia. And this is where it all gets it's interesting to me. Africa now gets pulled into this, and it's interesting to me again. And correct me if I'm wrong, ladies and gentlemen, but I always see these pictures. I don't see one black face, but Trump has now sent forces into Nigeria, airstrikes in Nigeria, northern Nigeria, to deal with ISIL in Nigeria, saying that the Christians are being attacked, and they're going there to defend the Christians that are being attacked. Nigeria's like, they're attacking Muslims and Christians. They don't care. Boko Haram doesn't care. And that offshoot of who Boko Haram is, they don't care. They're just attacking, period. But the mindset is that here I am. I'm coming to save the day. I'm coming to help you Nigerians. You Africans, we're on your side. You African Christians specifically. And we're coming to save the day. And with the coordination of the Nigerian government, they have attacked factions, who they have not said who, but factions in Africa. Let's wind it all up. I believe that Mark Rutte is a mastermind game planner of things that are happening right now. Africa is a dangerous place now. Africa is uniting. Africa is uniting behind Russia and China. That means that most of the world, the largest populations, Africa, China, right? And then the most powerful military forces, North Korea, Russia, have now developed a level of alliance to the point that they are saying, we don't need America. We definitely don't need NATO. We saw what Terrari has done with France. We saw what other African countries are doing, kicking out the West out of their countries, kicking their militaries out. We don't want you here. You cannot have our resources. You cannot have a base here. And then you see NATO saying, hey, we need to get quite concerned because our finances are leaving, right? We're allowing these Africans to take away our pocketbook. We're allowing Russia to tell us where to go, where not to go. And we're allowing China and North Korea to develop a military and technology that greatly outmeasures us. We should be concerned because the balance of power is being shifted. And if you sit down and you listen to Mr. Rutte, he is quite concerned. He's concerned about wars. He's concerned about the rise of technology of other nations. He's concerned that North America is losing its power. And that is the message that resonates in the ear of Donald Trump. That's the message. If you don't help, what's going to happen is you're going to have a world that's controlled by those people. And the reason we put this thing together is to make sure that we control the world. And so that's something that I would like you to keep your eyes on. Keep your eyes on the human resources manager, now Prime Minister, now head of NATO, who has a silver tongue to captivate not just Trump, but to captivate Netanyahu and to captivate his NATO colleagues, to make sure that NATO is united in spending much more money than they've ever spent in their life, more money than in the history of NATO is being raised. Everybody says, hey, pay up, 5% of your GDP. You've got to bring 5% to the table. You want to be a NATO country. And then let's keep our eyes on Russia. I mean, Vladimir, when you really deal with a Vladimir Putin, man, and it's unfortunate that he doesn't speak English. He can speak English, of course, but it's unfortunate that we don't hear him speaking, and we're always hearing from an interpreter because he speaks. Most of the things I hear are him speaking in his native language and it being interpreted for us via the social media. But he is quite a charismatic speaker. He is quite a brilliant individual. And he knows how the game is played, and to hear it articulated from him is extremely eye-opening. I think, as I said, this is called The Last Kings. He is one of the greatest world leaders in the 20th and 21st century that we could see. And he's one of the greatest thinkers. And at the end of the day, when history, causes all the dust to settle, we're going to realize the level that this guy was playing at. Serious level that he was playing at. Because, the great thing about Russia, and if you look into Russia really, Russia has never, for those who has never had African slaves, has never had African occupation. They've never occupied an African nation. Russia has sent help and forces to help South Africa. We know that what they're doing with Harare now. The Wagner Group has stepped into Africa and says, where can I help? We don't need anything. Where can I help? And he has positioned himself in a very, very good place. Very good, very good place. He's not running around shouting down Netanyahu. He's not involved himself in that because, of course, he's got his hands full with the Ukraine. But he realizes the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is to keep NATO out of his backyard. It's much bigger picture for him. Because the encroaching of those individuals into his backyard is the end of Russia. Once you let these guys sit in your backyard, you're in a lot of trouble. I mean, a lot of these nations, like China, figured out right away, we can't use the same internet these people use. We can't use the same types of social medias that these people use. Because we know we're advanced. We're ahead of them. And we don't want them to catch up. And that's a fact. And if you don't understand that, something's wrong with you. They're ahead of that. They're ahead of NATO. They're way ahead. They've been ahead. They're playing in university while Americans are playing in high school. Elementary school. Just the level of intellectual wherewithal that is happening in these nations, China and Russia, America doesn't have a chance. And if they're smart, if NATO is smart, and if I'm the head of NATO, I want a couple of very smart people on my side. I'm going after India. I'm going after India because the whole world's tech is run by Indians. All your technical support is run by Indians. I'm going after India, the subcontinent. I want India to be part of NATO. I want all of Indian technology to be part of NATO. I want to infuse Indian products into my economy as little as possible, of course, because they don't want to do what the world is waiting for, to release China and to release all these cheap, fantastic automobiles and all this technology that's sitting there in China that the rest of the world has no access to, because they want to keep China as poor as possible, which you're not going to be able to. But I would definitely go after India. That would be number one. And I would go after Nigeria. I would make right away, Nigeria, you get all your resources, you get all your oil, you get all your gold, right? Nigeria is extremely amicable to the West. They tried to set up Terrori. They listen to the West. They want the West support. I would go after them, and I would go after India. And just for games, just to play games, just to make it look good, I'd go after one of the Caribbean countries too. And unfortunately, my country, Trinidad and Tobago, is being far too complicit with American involvement dealing with Venezuela. Way too complicit. Kamala, the other Kamala, not the American Kamala, is far too complicit with America dealing with that. But if I'm NATO, I'm going to go recruiting. I'm going to go on an evangelism tour. And I want big countries with big brains. I want countries with big resources. And I want countries just for show. People that can talk us up. And people who are talking them up are people like Trinidad and Tobago, where Kamala said, "Come on in, Mr. Trump. Anything you need us to do, Mr. Trump, we gonna do it, massa." So got Trinidad acting stupid down there. But at the end of the day, Mark Rutte, he's running the show, ladies and gentlemen. He's running the show. When you have meetings and world powers come to sit down, this is the key of anything, right? The only people who don't do this are the Chinese. But when you have a meeting and the world powers come to sit down at the table, the man who's sitting in the middle of in the middle of power, and is the point person, that's the guy running the show. Everybody else is just nodding their head, right? He's the orchestrator. He's the Pied Piper. He's leading the show. And I'm just curious how this human resources director, of course, president of 14 years, prime minister rather, of 14 years of his nation, of his Deutschland nation, has positioned himself. He's about 50, I think he's 50, would he be 58 years old? Has positioned himself to effectively be the king of the world. I call it like that. He's the king right now. He's the king. The guy who runs NATO, the guy who pulls the strings in America and is pulling the strings in Israel. You know, if you're pulling the strings in Israel, if you're the puppet master of Israel, what do you get? You get surveillance. If you're the puppet master of America, what do you get? You get weapons of warfare. Right. And the only guy that he's concerned with is Putin, because Putin has both. He has surveillance, right? He has the KGB, he has all his secret police, he has all his technology, and he's got weapons. And he's a dangerous dude. And that's why I don't hear Mark talking about China. Trump talks about China because that's an economic war. But Rutte's not interested in an economic war. He's really interested in a real war. He is concerned for real war. All right. One of the last kings. Check him out. Mark Rutte, the head of NATO. A guy that's pulling all the strings. And when you look at him, too, to me, when I look at that brother, he looks like CIA. He looks like CIA. He kind of reminds me of Bush 1. But he looks like CIA because you know Bush 1 was a CIA guy. He looks like CIA. He looks like a guy who's sitting there in secret. He looks like a James Bond villain. That's what he looks like to me. Sitting there in secret rooms, figuring out secret plans and secret agendas. Let me tell you something. That guy is there running the world. And I dare say that a lot of things are happening in the world because Mark Rutte has winked, pointed his head in that particular direction. Period. So we're not living in the same kind of world that we're living in before. And many of you are believing that you're sitting here in democracies. You're not in democracies anymore. These are kings. These are kings who are running the world. Right? The kings of NATO, the king in Russia, the kings in China, the king in the United States of America. They're running the world. And everybody else is playing catch up. Period. Everybody else is playing catch up. And the only guy who I don't think they're going to allow to rise to that rank, who is working on a level that his brain is equal to all of those collective brains, is Traore. But Traore is building a nation right now. And he has to be submissive to certain elements that are helping him right now, because he knows they are way behind. Way behind. Africa needs to be leading the charge right now in respect to technology. Africans need to be the individuals reaching out to the Pakistans, reaching out to South Koreas and the Indias, as I mentioned before, reaching out to these individuals and saying, hey, let's talk about your weapons, your technology, reaching out to Iran. That's right. All those boogeyman nations. Anytime the West gives you a boogeyman, black man, that's your friend. Anytime the West gives you a boogeyman nation, free people looking to be free, that's your friend. Whether you, whatever nation, whatever nationality you are, but the boogeyman nations are the nations that you need to sit down and say, hey, What is it? Why are they trying to keep these people down so long? Why are they trying to keep Iran down so long? Well, what's going on? The boogeyman nations. Oh, we can't allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Oh, shoot, Iran must be doing something right. The boogeyman nations are the nations that I want to sit down and say, hey, man, what do y'all know that causes people to think that you're so doggone dangerous that you guys can't get a weapon? But they already have one. We already know that. I believe Iran's already got weapons a long time ago. They're just making the world not know that. But it's good to be back. It's good to see everybody back on the spiel. I'm anticipating and looking forward to opportunities to have some more dialogue with you. I want to talk about different stuff this year. I want to talk about relationships. I want to talk about everything. I want to talk about sports. You know, the spiel, again, for me is me allowing you to share the perspective that I see. I want to talk about languages. I want to talk about religion. I want to have a lot of conversations this year on the spiel, and I'm hoping that you guys are interested in joining with me with these particular conversations, because there's a lot of things to talk about, man. There's a lot of things to discuss, right? I've been planning a trip to go down to Israel for the last little while with Dr. David Israel, and it doesn't look good, man. It doesn't look good, and so what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to make sure that I get my Hebrew locked down. A lot of you, and I want to bust a couple bubbles with that. I think I'm gonna do a show specifically targeted to that. I might bring him on to do that, but you know, I've talked to so many people and like, oh, there's no such thing as as Hebrew. Hebrew is just Yiddish. Not true at all. There is a great influence that modern Hebrew is trying to put on the actual Hebrew language, and we need to talk about that. We need to talk about that effectively modern Hebrew is the enemy of Hebrew, in my opinion. This is me talking now. Modern Hebrew, to me, is the enemy of Hebrew. To understand and to know a language, to be literate in a language, you need to be able to read it, and you need to be able to write it, right? And you need to be able to speak it. Read it, write it, speak it. Now, one of my biggest issues with learning Hebrew is, and again, I would say I have a grade 3 understanding of the Hebrew language at this time, which is a mile more than a lot of other people in my Christian circle. Like they don't know what the letters are. They can't write it nor read it, nor speak it, and they use English transliteration for anything. They use Google for everything. They don't even have a proper Hebrew English dictionary in paper in their hands. So, but one of my biggest issues has been writing the language. And just in closing, writing the language, the characters are different. So Hebrew, how you read it and how you write it, similar to English, where some people who write in cursive, right? Cursive, like my I am a man shirt. This is not written in cursive. This is block letter. So you have the Hebrew that you read like this, that would be like block, and then you have the Hebrew that you write. And I have an issue with the written because I want to know where that came from. I'm like, where did that come from? After we were chiseling everything out, where did this come from? And so I've always put that on the back burner, which hurt me in learning the language, because you got to be able to write the language. And so sometimes the script form of the language is different than the block form of the language. And that has held me back a little bit. So I gotta catch up with that, straighten that out. But I want to have a conversation with you, potentially with Dr. Israel, about modern Hebrew is the enemy to ancient Hebrew. And we're going to have that conversation. All right. So this is Del K. Brereton, man. And this is The Real Spiel. I know how this algorithm works. I'm going to have to come back on here maybe twice a day and get the algorithm to like me again so I can hit it around the world to you. But bless you. We'll be in touch. And just remember, anytime you come on this show, I ain't afraid of you ninjas. But this is Del K. Brereton. This is The Real Spiel. And we'll talk soon. Shiloh Institute. Stand up. Dr. David Israel, Emmanuel Church of Jesus Christ Apostolic, and all the saints. The Spiel is back.